listening to the Adventure Party for the third week of November 2022. This week, the party give you the hot insider tips you need to maximise your investments and how to stop strangling the life out of the industry with your tight-fisted ways. The Adventure Party, discussing tabletop radio gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Owen.
I'm still Savage.
And I'm Warlord and financial whiz kid Scarr.
Got your big bag of gold pieces in real life? What are you wasting your money on? And what is a savvy purchase from the discerning consumer? We're here to talk about what people are paying for in gaming. With the price is right.
Yeah, I'm looking at 2 benches of modelling gear and various half-completed projects, and I recently purchased airbrush, so I'm feeling it. Yeah.
So I waste a lot of money on gaming stuff, or I buy a lot of gaming stuff, and that's fine. That's the hobby, right? You buy stuff that you may or may not use, and maybe I'll use it, but if I don't buy it now, when will I get it again? I mean, we've all had that experience.
I can see an awful lot of hardbacks in my shelf of big hardback adventures and supplements I bought because, I might never get this again. And it's like, immediately went to the basket.
And sometimes you're right. Sometimes you won't get them again. That's the thing. It's not always like wrong. It's like, you can't get that now, no more, man. But I've noticed particularly recently, there have been a couple of offerings put out there that seem to be aimed at a different strata of consumer. And it's weirding me out, man. It's like, I'm looking at them going, the hell. And I'd like to start off by taking a few shots at WotC, as I so love to do.
Easy money, baby. Go for it, yeah. It's been weird.
It's the 30th anniversary of Magic. So they decided to put out a product that they've kind of done sort of before, which is effectively they're going to reprint the first set of Magic. They're going to reprint Beta. And the way they're going to do it is they're going to print them with different backs. So they're not tournament legal. These cards are not for tournament play. They're not really for kind of any play. They're not real cards in any material sense. So it's a way to sidestep the reserve list so they can reprint the Power 9 and reprint cards they've said they will never reprint. And they decided to do them in a collector set of 4 boosters. And a lot of people are like, oh man, this is cool. We can buy these and we can do like a draft. You can basically get 4 boosters and go play a draft of Beta Magic, which will probably be mostly terrible. Because most of the cards in it are bad, because it was the first set. There's a couple of ridiculous cards, and then most of the other cards are just dire. And then and it's the price. It was $1,000 for 4 of these boosters. $1,000 for 60 proxies.
Some of the most over-packaged card I've ever seen in my life.
And this is like as in the old days booster. It's 15 cards. One of them is a land.
2 of them are lands,
and there's 1 rare, 3 uncommons.
Yeah, there are now. They are the modern card face and a gold bordered back, which is non-tournament legal, right? And they are 60 proxies from the base set, and for $1,000. And I've seen people crack them as kind of going, guys, don't buy this stuff, but I just cracked this because I don't want to crack it. And I open it up and just junk, because most of the set's junk.
So let's name some of the cards you're hoping to get out of one of these.
There's the dual lands, there's the Moxes, there's Black Lotus, there's Ancestral Recall, there's Time Spiral? Time Book?
But your point being that, so name another card from that set that is like, Goblin Raider or something.
You might get Sheevan Dragon at least, and Sheevan Dragon is not worth anything, but it's a cool card at least. But you also might get, there's just Drek. Hold on, I can look up the stuff.
Set, I'm gonna pull on deck.
Urza's Spectacles. You might get Urza's Spectacles.
What do they do?
Let you look at your opponent's hand.
Okay. If they've got a game plan, they're gonna play it onto the table, and you'll get to see it then.
I want to point out that I don't think I've ever seen Urza wear those spectacles. I don't think I don't think he actually. I think they're just a collector's item they put on a shelf, which is appropriate for this.
He had
situation.
them before he jammed those 2 power stones in his eyes.
Okay, fair enough.
That guy, okay. But there's tons and tons of cards in there, as you point out, that no one could name off the top of their head, and you're more likely to get one of them than anything else. So yeah, and this is to celebrate. Hold on, let me get this straight. This is to celebrate the 30th anniversary of a collectible card game that many of us, myself included, kind of got into. Man, that's a while ago. Don't want to think about that. And it was kind of affordable. You know, you could have spent your pocket money on other things, but it was kind of affordable and cool, and your friends were playing it. And it was sort of there was an excitement about cracking open some new cards and playing with them. This doesn't seem kind of affordable, and I'm not sure how it's meant to help the ordinary.
This is the celebration of Magic. It's not for you, you filthy poor, or rather, filthy middle class person. Or rather, filthy wealthy person who's not a total mark. It's like, can you imagine basically going, you know what, I'm not going to buy any Magic this year. I'm not going to buy any of my normal sets. I'm instead going to buy 4 boosters of proxies. It's just incredible. And the Magic community has reacted the background to this is Hasbro has committed to increasing profits by a significant margin this year. They've said in their thing, we're going to increase our profitability. And if you look up how much product Magic is releasing at the moment, I think they have 20 different products coming out this year or something like that.
Okay.
It is ridiculous. It's just like there's Commander collections, there's multiple secret layers, there's the standard set.
Those tend to be IP crossovers, right? They're doing like G.I. Joe and...
Yeah, some of them are, but like some of them are just... You know, they're doing here's, the Dominaria, here's Brothers War, here's all that. They're just releasing tons and tons and tons and tons of material to the point where the player base has kind of gone, I can no longer collect everything. It's impossible. And I just feel like I'm getting farmed for money. That's what it feels like to them.
Remember the comic book variant cover crash?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mid-90s? Feels like we're going in that direction. Okay, so that's definitely one place where people are spending crazy money for what?
Very little value. No value. Almost no value. That's the thing. It's no value. That other stuff I could be like, okay, well, fine, it's expensive, but at least you get some stuff out of it. This one, proxies, dog. Proxies.
Yeah, like I would accept if it was like €1,000 for one of each card in that set. Then you would have these one of each, and you could maybe make a play at pretending to be a legacy or vintage player or something like that. That I understand as a collector's item, but like random boosters, like
they could have done these as non-things for $60 or something. Buy your 4, and like that's $60 for 4 boosters. That's a ridiculous markup. But they could have done that and been like, here's $60, and people could buy it and do like beta drafts, and that would be like, okay, that's kind of cool.
Remember this goofy card?
Yeah, but $1,000.
Okay, now we have a unit of value for everything else we're going to talk about this episode. An anniversary booster, $250.
Well, yes. Would you rather buy 4 boosters of Magic cards, or would you rather buy 2.5 Dragon Gods?
Yes, because I also saw WizKids are doing D&D Icon of the Realms miniatures, a gargantuan Tiamat. A Tiamat with a wingspan of 28 inches for 400 bones. Whew.
It's a good conversation starter.
I suppose it is.
Where did this damn thing come from?
This or a PS5, eh?
Yeah, well, I've seen one in person. It's a big chunk of plastic. It's very well detailed. It captures Tiamat rather spectacularly. If your Hero Forge mini gets plonked on the table of a weekly game session, and Tiamat gets plonked on the other side of the table, I hope you've got your affairs in order. That's going to be a tough fight. If I'd say anything about the model as a playable piece, I'd say it probably should have some kind of discrete flat places on the model where you can stand heroes so that you can simulate them climbing Tiamat to take on one of her heads. Because that's how it's going down. You don't fight Tiamat face to face. You got to get up on her belly button. But I digress. It's expensive.
It's very expensive, and for me, it's one of these models it's low utility. Like, this is a centerpiece model. This isn't actually meant to be used really for gaming, because how often do you fight Tiamat? Like, and if your GM buys it, you're going to fight Tiamat at least twice, because their GM has to justify that $400 purchase to themselves, and that'll take you strange places.
We'll do one villain monologue with it. We just put it on the table for effect, and then end of the campaign we'll have the fight where it'll have to be a barren open plain, because otherwise the wings are going to keep knocking over trees and things. So just put her on top of a mountain. That's another good way.
Go back to Third Ed, where you could just get a mid-level avatar of Tiamat and throw 20 of those at, I don't know.
Like, the thing is this meant to be something basically people stick on Critical Role, and then, people are like, oh man, that looks awesome. It was a great centerpiece the way thing did with maybe I should buy one of those. It's like, is this aspirational purchasing, aspirational pricing? You're going to put this out there and hope people scrimp and save up to buy this? I mean, I'm not super happy about that kind of price. Like, $400 for a single mini.
The size of it, I mean, given the tooling required, the size, the fact it's fully painted, it does justify the price. If you compare it to collectible statuettes and things in general. Is it
as well painted as a collectible statuette though? Because I know the paint jobs they're functional. I mean, and I don't complain because
Well, a big mini like that, it's not as super critical. You could argue that it's probably not to the standard of character pieces like a Conan or a Darth Vader that you get out of one of these sort of statuette studios who do busts and things. D&D miniatures or tabletop miniatures are often fairly expensive, unless of course you do something. I mean, let's go to the slightly other end of the scale in the same space and talk about things like the Kickstarters where you're going to get 200 minis for the cost of a 30th anniversary booster.
Yes.
Which I've done. The latest Bones Kickstarter landed at what I think was the start of this year. It feels like about 1 million years ago. And it's now sitting in an accusatory-looking box staring at me. I've got a few models painted out of it, but a lot of that money, I'd at least have maybe proxied in, maybe started playing Magic again if I'd spent the money on a booster. But it's currently looking at me as a big old pile of plastic that isn't painted, and I certainly couldn't use the centerpiece for anything other than a mass grave.
It's tough, isn't it? Because sometimes you're like, oh man, if I got those, I'd have enough minis to run any game that I want to run. I can just pull it out of the box, And it's very interesting to me, something like Bones is, on one level, it's a good value purchase. You're getting a lot of plastic for your book. The problem is actually utilizing all that plastic, like getting the stuff out of the box and putting it on the table and making use out of it. There are people who definitely wring the maximum value out of that. There are other people who buy it, use one or two pieces, and then it dwells in shame somewhere. Like, because find me the wargamer, or find me the person who has all of their miniatures painted and all of their miniatures assembled and all of them used. Such a person does not exist. Everyone's got an unpainted backlog of stuff waiting for, I got that while ago. I got that Goliath gang a while ago. I'll put them together at some point and I'll paint them when we do that Necromunda campaign. Wasn't that 2 editions ago? Yes, shut up. Are these vintage redemptionists still in white metal? Yes. When did you? I'm not here to answer questions.
Yeah. I mean, there is unfortunately, and it drags us back to Magic again. There is this sort of investment vehicle, or the speculative aspect. Just, I don't want to circle back too many times, but what's an unopened, or what's the value of the cards that came out of the 30th anniversary booster? Like, what are they trading for?
Like the Axel cards?
No, the proxies that you spent $1,000 on.
I would say they're going for probably a reasonably significant amount. Let me just check, because and that may fool people. The reason will be different. I would say the.
We don't have time to do a full episode on the financialization of Magic, but we might someday. Okay, let's move on then. Less tangible things, because I know what no one is going to give a stink about in terms of price. There's absolutely no one spending X amount for basic bog standard core books, splat books, adventures, whatever you care to name them. Most people wouldn't really consider there to be much speculative value in picking up the latest Woofrup adventure or Spelljammer. But they sure as hell don't like paying full price for
them. They do not, no. So, there are people in the RPG space who will spend a lot of money. I'm one of them. I'll buy stuff. I'll buy limited editions sometimes. I'll buy lots of accessory materials. I'll buy terrain. I'll buy a bit of the bits and pieces. Then there are other people who are a bit more frugal, who are a bit more discerning in their purchasing. And then there are people who are just cheap, who will not pay for stuff, you know? And there are people who expect to get a 600-page full-colour core book, edited to perfection, play-tested to destruction, tons of art, full-colour, glossy pages, everything. And if you ask them to pay more than $60 for them, the nose turns right up and they kind of start accusing you of, oh, this is ridiculous. This is gouging. This is horrific. And then they'll try to buy the PDF, and if the PDF is more than $20, all the toys will leave the pram. Like, this is outrageous. You're price gouging. Like, if these guys are lucky, they'll sell 2,000 copies of this. And a lot of work went into it, and a lot of everything they did was not cheap. And that was the price 20 years ago, but you're expecting to be still paying the same price now. It is incredible.
So, accounting for inflation, you'd actually be paying less, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I feel like an awful lot of people like to use, well, let's say, mainstream economies of scale as a sort of benchmark for the pricing of things. Like, they say, oh, if I was to buy this hardcover of, like, my dad's tractor catalogue in a bookstore, it would be, even with all this high glossy art, it would only be €40. So how could Cubicle 7 possibly charge me €60 for an equivalent book? And it's just like,
how mainstream do you think tractors are? But I take your point.
The tractor manual is subsidized by the fact you spent $250,000 buying the tractor. So having a nice glossy thing is a loss leader that you are selling to people.
But these kinds of things, the mainstream books are printed by organized printing presses
in the tens of thousands. Yep,
who have vast economies of scale. Although maybe not as much anymore now that paper's getting harder to find. But that also comes back to gaming. But economy of scale for these people is huge. They have Dorling's Kindersley or whatever. They produce millions of books every year. They have all kinds of processes. What's it called? Vertical integration. They probably own the factories that make the glue for their bindings. And then you're expecting that same economy of scale to happen to these small print run books, which are going to be in the low thousands and farmed out to whatever. And especially since now we have print on demand, and that's the standard we're operating under now, because it's a great international hobby, so it has to be print on demand and be printed anywhere in the world, and that vastly reduces any economic benefits, because you're having to basically contract out to any number of people, and it becomes the printer's market, not the publishers. Like WotC and Call Cthulhu people whose name escapes me right now.
Chaosium.
They don't own their printers. They have to contract people for this. So you can't expect them to have the same level of economic control over their printing process that a mainstream thing that you see in Easton's or Barnes and Noble. That the things, like, you have to understand that we are in a niche hobby, and niche hobbies cannot benefit from more mainstream economies of scale on a whole range of matters. And that's not even getting into the fact that how many people are you getting to play test your product for free because you can't afford to have time more people for play testing because of how cutthroat your design process staffing is.
Okay, so to synthesize some of that, costs of production are higher than normal publications. margins are slimmer, print runs are smaller, and yeah, as I said, the people who are making RPG core books can't really play with economies of scale to the same extent. But the marketplace demands an almost static price compared to 20 years ago, and that the thing arrive perfect in function and form. No missed typos and no refer to page XX stuff in the rules.
But the trick is here, right? How can we say, oh, we're giving out about WotC charging you $1,000 for 60 books? Now we're defending other people charging 60 for a core book? Yeah, because of economies of scale. WotC pay less for their stuff than the little guy does. So the little guy has to charge based on what WotC charges, and WotC make a lot more money per unit than the little guy does. As paradoxical as that seems, the little guy is far more squeezed than WotC is. So giving the little guy a hard time is ridiculous. And holding them to the standards that WotC can achieve is ridiculous. And never mind the fact that often what the little guy produces is better quality. It's just, it's outrageous. The people go, oh, when I bought the PHB and the DMG and the Monsters Manual, which are 3 books rather than this 1 book you're trying to sell me, I paid $100. So logically I should pay $33 for your core book. That's not the case at all. It's maddening because you see these bad faith arguments deployed about the price of stuff, and it's like, no, it's not the same. WotC and a small company are not the same. They're not working on the same way. They're trying to pay people, and they're paying, their writers as much as they can afford, which is not a lot. They're paying their artists, which is not a lot, but at the same time, you try to raise the prices at all, toys with the pram. It's very rough. You've got to understand that complexity. You've got to understand that it's not the same for the little guy as it is for the big guy.
Like, do we want to get into gamer psychology and the quote-unquote logic behind this? Because we could get into poor student syndrome being applied well past the point where you're earning $50,000 a year in your job.
Yeah. Well, I am but a poor student.
Look, if you want to engage in that, and I haven't always had a lot of money to throw about, but there's never been a better time to access the riches of core books and settings and splat books, whatever else. Like, just open up Humble Bundle. Just go on there and pay $5 and you get 6 books from a top tier sort of IP that you've definitely heard of, be it Pathfinder or Chaosium or whoever else is putting out a bundle this month. It's not hard to get access to the information, the actual product, the artwork, whatever, that you're so thirsty for that you refuse to spend 60 or whatever on. But understand this: those PDFs, those core book PDFs, those splat book PDFs, are, in terms of information, worth exactly as much, almost exactly as much, depending how you access it, as the physical book you'd put on your shelf. Why? Because when all is said and done, at either WotC scale or independent publisher scale, the cost of producing a book does not lie in the cost of printing it. That's pretty marginal. If it's 10,000 or 1,000, the cost of it is in getting it written, getting it proofread, getting it tested, getting the artwork together, getting the layout together, getting the maps, getting it marketed, etc., etc., etc. And if that's what you value, oh scrimping gamer, then you should stop making this argument that PDFs should be worth a fraction of what printed books are worth. PDFs are more versatile and more useful in many ways because you can search them, pretty easily, and they can be hyperlinked, which again is additional production cost. I cannot understand, unless you're some sort of bibliophile who just likes to sit around sniffing the spines of books. There's no intrinsic worth in a book you can put on your shelf compared to one you can put on your iPad. And if you've got an iPad, you probably plenty of money to throw around anyways. Yeah, sorry, that's just something that's been bubbling away for a while. It is the cost, and think about it, the book isn't the paper it's printed on, or the chip it's kept on, or the RAM it's stored in. The book is the product of people creating, which is, in this hobby, that's kind of, if they're doing their work correctly, and we can talk about that some other time, they're doing a lot of creative heavy lifting for you, which is what you're paying for. So who cares if it comes on dead tree or, smart sand? It has an intrinsic worth in terms of the information it's providing, the creativity it's stirring.
you're in fact paying for intellectual work, intellectual labour. And our society in general has a sort of problematic relationship with non-solid things being charged for, but yeah, no, it is something of great value and should be...
And you can get it for cheap as chips these days, as long as you're not, not going to be exactly what you want all the time. But, wow, I mean, my drive-through RPG folder is stuffed with things I haven't read yet because they're just so cheap, I wasn't going to pass them up. What are we complaining about again? Like, what's good value? Okay, we've complained an awful lot, but let's devote the last 5 to 10 minutes to this. What is good value in gaming? What are you getting lots of bang for your buck that you might not necessarily realise?
What you use a lot of. That's the simple answer. What you use a lot of. Like, if you buy, you could spend, maybe you use the Tiamat and you use it every session. I don't think you will, though. But maybe you could spend 200-300 on terrain from WizKids, right? And you could use that then, and you use that basically for an entire campaign. Use it basically every time I have a dungeon fight, I just click these pieces together. There's our little grid. That's fine. Or maybe you buy a good pack of wet or dry erase markers, and you get a chess mat, and you just draw everything out. Or maybe you spend $1,000 on or €1,000 on an FDM printer, and you print tons of terrain, and that basically keeps you in terrain for the rest of your career. If you get a lot of joy out of it, and you get a lot of use out of it, you're good. I think the marginal purchases are the ones that kill you. The stuff you buy and you never get around to playing, or stuff you buy and never get around to using. But even then, if you get to read it, like the stuff that sits on the shelf in its cellophane, that's a problem. I'm guilty of that. That's the stuff you're not getting the use out of. Like, I've bought board games off Kickstarter for $200, $300 or euros or whatever. And I have then played those games once, but there are other games I have played that I've got 30, 40 hours out of. And at that price, I'm like, yeah, that was fun. I spent $200. I played it for 60 hours. That's a good investment by anyone's measure. And you might say, oh, you get the same out of a game for, $40 or €40. And I'm like, yeah, but, I got to play it as a group, the board game, and that has an additional value to it. I think it's what you're getting out of it. Do you get a lot of value out of it, is the question. And that's the difficult one before you buy something. Am I going to get some value out of this?
Warlord, what are you putting the war chest to?
If you're literally just, I want to get the amazing RPG for as cheap as possible, there's a ton of free RPGs out there. If you're not full of and you're not actually just trying to score free PDFs and try to get one over these poor artists who've, slaved away for years and you're just taking their stuff. If you're actually, I am actually a poor student and I want to, just go on DriveThruRPG, itch.io, Humble Bundle. There's a huge amount of pretty good material for song or legitimately free. You can get all of, not Jackson Crawford, Kevin Crawford. All Kevin Crawford's stuff. Enough material to play any number of genres and any number of things for absolutely free. itch.io, all the story games, all the one-shot story games, campaign games, OSR stuff, brand new modern stuff, experimental party games, or good enough to run anything. Just, if you invest some time just searching for what you want, you can probably find a free version for it. But if that's what you actually want and you're not just looking for the convenience of a BitTorrent link, then you can find it. Find something, anything. If you legitimately want to try something for free, a lot of people will give their stuff away for free. And if you're the type to get something for free and then maybe buy it later, there are games that work on that paradigm. So, I don't think you have a tremendous excuse in this case. Unless you are legitimately looking for the full big product for a song, and if that's the case, you really need to consider what your actual economic goal is. Are you actually going to be looking for stuff to play at the table, or are you looking for stuff where you get one over some artist on the internet or something? I don't know. Maybe I'm being mean, but
Well, we're looking for suggestions at this point. So if you've got anything,
I mean, as I said, anything from Kevin Crawford, Cine Nominated Press.
I've got a few suggestions I'd make. I'm going to sort of try and break it down to the different houses of gaming. So let's start with the what I've got least to say about the card gamer people. Get a nice playmat. You'll roll them out every session. In fact, do yourself a favour and don't just go buy a playmat that's themed around the game you're playing. Go onto somewhere like AliExpress and find some nice artwork that you like, be it anime waifu girl or a scene ripped from a video game, an 8-bit side scroller or something. I've got some desktop mats, the big wide format ones, the themed around Destiny that I picked up a while back, and roll that out when you next play a game and sort of confound your opponent a little bit. They'll be like, "What in the Sam Hill is that?" It's Washington crossing the Delaware. Let's go.
Buy a high-end deck box.
Yeah,
That'll stick to you forever.
No matter what decks go through it, no matter what games go through it. That's a good idea. Or if you want to save money, go start playing Marvel Snap, which all of my friends are currently obsessed with. Ben Brode, I think, is the lead designer. He did a lot of work on Hearthstone back in the day when it was the hotness. I've sworn off anything like that, so I couldn't tell you for certain. But everyone else I know has turned into a Marvel Snap drone, and they're having a great time. The Wargamers. Terrain, as we've already covered, always a good investment. An airbrush. If you are sitting looking at rank and file 20 guys that you've stuck your fingers in them together over a couple of nights, and now you're dreading the prospect of getting them painted, you could do worse than an airbrush, brother. There's cheap ones on places like Amazon that'll cost you less than 5 models from GW. You'll be learning a new skill. You probably have the paints that you can put through it already. Airbrushes, as long as you're cleaning them, can be remarkably sort of tolerant. It's another excuse to go to your local game store and pick up a few supplies. Most of them are carrying airbrush ready paint lines now. And you'll just knock out those rank and files, get your armies on the table with the, minimum 3 colours. They'll be tournament ready. Same applies if you are a tabletop gamer who's got 1 or 2 piles of shame, be it Bones or Kingdom Monster or whatever it is that you're looking at going, I really should get round to those. Large models especially, airbrushes are fantastic for producing great results, and everyone will think that you bought it from WizKids. Go to itch.io, buy a core book from a game that is kind of peripherally related to something you're interested in, and read it. Even if you just flick through over a couple of coffee breaks, you pay $4 or $5, you'll absorb some new ideas, you might be struck by how this could be done differently, and you will enhance your gaming that way. If you're a player, then go on a Hero Forge. If you already know someone who's plonked down the money for a 3D printer of any caliber, they'll be more than happy to knock out a custom character model for your next game. You can go to Hero Forge, you design your own model exactly as it should appear. I've just recently put together a barbarian surf elf for an upcoming game, shipped it off to the GM who agreed to print it. Really looking forward to getting my hands on that and painting it. And it's like it's a classic character model thing, is always going to be something you use every game. It represents you. You're going to have an intrinsic sort of attachment to it. If you designed it yourself, even more so. It's insanely good value for the cost of, let me figure this out very quickly, 1/20th of a 30th anniversary Magic Booster, depending on where you buy them. What else? Subscription services, maybe back a creator. Put $1 a month into someone who's making good stuff that you like, be it STL files, be it character portraits, be it material for your favorite game.
Maps a big one.
Maps. Oh, well, that brings me to, if you're a GM who has the luxury of running tabletop games in person, you can't go wrong with a backup folio of random maps. I've got one that has seen a lot of use. It was either early 5th ed or it was the end of 4th ed D&D map folios. It is just paper. It's just high quality print, but you're not stuck for a cave, for an abandoned village, for a lava pit with floating islands. You just quickly whip it out. For the money you'll pay for them and the ease of use, you can do no wrong there. And to bring it back to the digital realm, here's an interesting one. Depending on what you paid for it, you're probably sitting there with a big fat adventure, Avernus or Dragon Heist or one of these. What's the current one for Wolfrup that isn't the enemy.
Not the enemy within? They're working on a new Lustria one that isn't out yet, though.
Somebody somewhere is going to be doing a little bit of ancillary work. They'll sit down, they'll read it, they'll go, this mentions these wanted posters. I'll put together wanted posters. I'll stick them on Drive-Thru RPG for a couple of bucks. You could do worse as a GM than coming up to running that session. Just jump on to Drive-Thru RPG, check if anyone's making sort of ancillary handout stuff or extra bits and pieces, or have done a nice kind of version of the map you'll need. Pay him a couple of dollars and roll it out during the game. You run down to the print shop, another couple of dollars to get them printed. I had great success with this. There was Waterdeep gazettes that were produced to tie in with Dragon Heist that feature little headlines and things, little snippets from the book that tie into the adventure. You hand them out to the players, they read them, the characters read them, go, they stick them in the folder with their character sheets. They pull them out every so often to see if they can wrinkle some extra nuggets. There's nothing on them. There's complete red herrings, but they had a lot of fun. But that's another couple of dollars going to an independent creator who's supporting something you've already paid, you've invested some money into, and that you and your group are playing on the regular anyways. It's a good investment and you will get the value out of it very quickly. That's that. That's me done. Bye-bye. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I think we need to wrap it here.
If you know of any bargains, or want to come and shout at us for accusing you of being a tightwad,
Or Mark,
please come to our Discord and shout at us. But for now, this party's over.
Thanks for listening to The Adventure. Find show notes and links to things we've mentioned at www.theadventuringparty.net and on our Facebook page. Leave comments there, or talk to our Twitter account at AdventurePC1, or record a voice message at www.speakpipe.com/theadventureparty. You can also be contacted directly by email at party@theadventureparty.net. If you'd like to be in touch with the party all the time, come join our Discord server. Show notes. The Adventuring Party, based on the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike 33 license.